Welcome to my review for the 1981 slasher classic The Burning. This is a story about a guy called Cropsey. He's the janitor at a summer camp, but he's not very kind to the kids that he's in charge of. So one night they play a prank on him, which sadly goes horribly wrong, and Cropsey almost burns to death, but he burns so badly that he has to spend 5 years in hospital. And when he comes out, he's horribly disfigured from head to toe. He makes little to no effort to integrate himself back into society, and instead he goes to the nearest summer camp to where he used to work, because the one where he used to work is now shut down, but there's another one just across the way, and he basically goes on a killing spree, just killing camp counsellors, cat campers, anybody he comes across. I don't think he's targeting any of the kids from the original prank. I'm not sure he knows who any of those kids are. There is one guy who's now a camp counsellor at the new camp who was involved in the prank, but I don't think Cropsey knows that. That's my impression anyway. But I love the design of this guy. His burned face is incredible. You don't get to see it much in the movie until the very end, but if you go on Google, just type in Cropsey The Burning, you'll probably find a picture of him on there. His makeup is terrific. Tom Savini did the effects and makeup work in this film, and anytime you got him on board for a slasher film, you knew you were in for good quality. I think Cropsey's got a better burned face than Freddy Krueger. I really do. I think it's that good. And I love some of his little quirks throughout this film. So he kills most of his victims with these little garden shears. I can't think of that many kills in all the horror films I've seen with garden shears, but I mean, if they're sharp enough, you can use them to chop or stab. It's an effective weapon. I remember Roy Burns using them in Friday Part 5 when he sort of dipped them down into that girl's eyeballs. And just this last week, I got done watching I Spit on Your Grave, and this girl chops this guy's dick off with some. He did deserve it though, but I can't get that image out of my head. It's horrible. But yeah, I've never seen anybody use that weapon all the way through a film though, which is basically what Cropsey does. And I like the thing he does as well, where he likes to lie down on the ground and ambush people. It's an easy trap to fall into when you watch a summer camp slasher film, to think that the killer is going to act more or less like Jason Voorhees. But if you think about it, this film came out in 1981, the same year as Friday the 13th Part 2, so they couldn't have copied Jason Voorhees because he'd not been on the screen yet. But yeah, there's one scene here where Cropsey pops out from a sleeping bag and kills somebody. There's another good one where he's lying down in a canoe and then pops out and kills these kids. That's a great scene, by the way. It's the most famous scene in the film. There are a bunch of kids trying to escape on this raft, and they spot a canoe in the middle of the lake, and they go to investigate it. And I could tell that something was going to happen here, but just the way that it was being filmed and maybe the musical cues, whatever. But I presumed that they would find the dead body of one of their campmates in the canoe, and then they'd all panic and jump in the water or go to the shoreline, and then Cropsey would pull somebody down under the water and then chase a couple of the others down, and this would all take place over 2 or 3 minutes. Maybe one person would get away in the canoe meanwhile. Something like that. What I didn't expect was that Cropsey himself would pop out of the canoe and just kill like 5 of them in 10 seconds flat. Absolutely brilliant. Don't usually see scenes like that in slasher films, and full credit to them for coming up with it. My death radar doesn't usually start spinning round in my head until there's one character on their own, or 2 characters on their own possibly. When it's a group of 5, I usually feel like we're safe for the time being, if you see what I mean, but not around Cropsey. Anything can happen around him. Another thing I love about this film is the lake next to the main campsite. I mean, it's huge and it looks gorgeous. Apparently it's in Buffalo. That's where this film was shot. I've only ever known Buffalo as that wintry, snowy place where you see NFL games taking place. I mean, the fans at those games must be crazy, but apparently they do also get sunny weather in Buffalo at some points of the year, and the proof is in this movie. But that lake is astonishing. I mean, it's better than any of the iterations of Crystal Lake that you see in the Friday the 13th movies, and I do like that series. But there are times when characters in The Burning are talking in front of this lake, and I'm almost tuning out of what they're saying and just looking at the backdrop. It's incredible. And the location scouting in this film was great. Even later on in the film, when we move to a completely different neck of the woods, there's this twisty, twirly canal-type place at one point that looks like it could have come out of the Amazon. During one of the chases near the very end, there's this rock wall next to the shoreline, which was a great find. If we talk about the characters for a bit now, there's a huge amount of extras in this film, and whenever a film takes this path, they normally make a very obvious distinction between who's a principal character and who's a background extra. You know, if there's a big crowd scene, you'll see all the main characters sort of sat at the front. They're the only people who get lines. It'll feel a little bit unnatural at times, but in The Burning, there's different levels of characters all the way down. And even people who are in the background for the most part still get to have one scene where they'll say lines or be at the forefront of some activity, or they'll get to do something, which just makes the whole film feel so much more natural. It makes the whole situation we're in feel so much natural. So near the start, there's a game of baseball going on, and the ball accidentally goes in these bushes. So we need a character to go and get the ball. But the twist is that this character will almost get killed by Cropsey. Now, normally this would be a main character, but in this film, it's a girl who's known as Tiger, and it's her only main scene in the film, really. But for the rest of the film, you still see her in the background, but instead of just being a random face now, she's a character who we know because we've seen her in that one scene. And lots of people get little moments to shine like this, even though they're way down the cast list. Apparently Holly Hunter is in this film, an actress who went on to be quite famous, although I don't know her by sight. I've never seen her in anything, but the only reason I know she's in it is because I heard it mentioned on the commentary track. But she's a background person, really, but in the second half of the film, she gets a couple of lines at some point. I don't know where, but she gets that moment where she gets to do something. And if we go back to the raft scene, you might normally have expected 5 main characters to be on this raft, and we'll have a bit of a bloodbath of the cast at this point, and maybe leave just 2 or 3 alive elsewhere. But no, I think we get 2 main characters and 3 of the extras for the raft. So 3 people who maybe have done nothing up to this point other than stand there somewhere now get to be in a really famous scene. And that's great, not just for the actors, but also for the integrity of the story. The whole camp setup feels very natural. People are coming in and out. It's not just the main characters doing stuff. There's not really a final girl or a final boy in this film. At the top end of the cast, it very much feels almost like an ensemble of 6 or 7, any one of which could be the last person standing. And having said that, a lot of people get to survive this film, which is nice. Cropsey still gets a high kill count, which is good for the film. But that's the advantage of having a big cast list. You know, you get to have it both ways. There are way too many good characters for me to go through and review each one of them. I'd say my favourite is probably Alfred, just because of this weird character trait that they give him, that he's basically a peeping Tom. He gets caught looking in the girls' showers at the start of the film, and then later on we see him spying on a couple as they're having sex. And if this was a bad apple in the group, I wouldn't think twice about it. I'd just think, oh yeah, you're going to get the garden shears around your neck later in the film. But Alfred is otherwise portrayed as like the most sympathetic guy at the camp. You know, it's implied that he's lonely and he's not had that many friends up to this point, but he's mostly portrayed as a good character. So it's really weird how they give him this character trait that's not good at all. I mean, that could lead him down a really bad path after the film if he keeps going with that sort of behaviour. It's just really odd. I mean, this guy's almost the main protagonist, almost. So to give him that trait is really bizarre. I do like the camaraderie between a lot of the characters. Cropsey takes a long time to get going in this film, so we get lots of scenes with people messing around and playing pranks on each other. My favourite of which is probably when Grazer gets shot in the bum with this pellet. It's another excuse for us to hang out with at the lake, which is also good. I swear there's 5 girls just sitting around in skimpy bikinis on a raft in this scene, and you're more likely to be looking at the lake than them. That's how gorgeous the lake is. There are a couple of good fake-out scenes in the first half of the film where you think somebody's going to die and they don't. I like that. And there's also this really bizarre scene where about 6 of the boys are just hanging out in a cabin, and Cropsey just randomly walks up to the door, looks in, and then just walks off again, as if he's saying, 6 here, maybe a bit too many. I'll be back later when you're a bit more spread out, boys. And I've got to mention the music as well in this. It's got this great little track that plays throughout. It's like a little melody. It's not quite as catchy as the one from Halloween or Suspiria, something like that, but it's still good enough that when my movie finished the other night, I just let the main menu play with that music for about 5 minutes as I was finishing my coffee. It's a good one. So we've reached the part of the review of a really good film where I have to try and think of something bad just so I'm not being biased or unfair or anything like that. And the only thing I can think of in this movie that I would change is the scene in the beginning where Cropsey gets burned. He kind of, when he knocks the skull with the flame on it onto his bed, what he does is, it's not really a natural hand movement, it's a little bit contrived. So I would have had all the rapping on the window from the kids cause vibrations that just made the skull slowly topple over onto the bed. I would have done it that way, but I mean, it's a very small thing. Also, in the mine at the end when they kill Cropsey, some of the camera movements are it's a little bit hard to track sometimes what's going on and where the characters are in relation to each other, but again, minute things. So on the whole, I think this is a great film. It's one of the best slashers from the golden era of slasher movies in the early 80s. It's better than most Halloween and Friday the 13th films, in my opinion, and I'm a big fan of both of those series. I own the film proudly on Blu-ray. It's even got a great cover picture of the shears going down into this red river of blood there. It's terrific. It's really good. It's the sort of film that makes me want to have been a kid who went to summer camp in Buffalo in the early 80s, even though that would make me a lot older right now than I am. But anyway, yeah, let's get to the bag of terror and find out what sort of score we have for The Burning. There's lots to tally up here. So we've got 4. There's any trouble with really good films, it makes it hard to carry the axes. Right, 4.5 bloody axes out of 5. That is an absolutely superb score, almost masterpiece territory. It's a brilliant film. If you've never seen it before, check it out. Okay, I'll be back next time. See you, bye.